Welcome to SoulForum. Each episode invites you to journey across the landscape of our global collective soul. From the moment humankind entered into the story of the universe, we have sought to orient ourselves within this unfolding gift of life. Together, we continue to seek insights and language to navigate our experience of spirituality, ethics, sexuality and gender roles, civic engagement, our role in the ecosphere, and more. Your guide for each of our series are emerging scholars from around the world studying at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California. The GTU is one of the world's most comprehensive centers for graduate study of religion and theology. It's a leading destination for leaders and innovators from a wide range of spiritual and philosophical perspectives to explore the world's great religions and wisdom traditions. So give yourself a moment to lean in and journey a little deeper into the human experience. Welcome to SoulForum.
Let me begin this podcast with the words of a well-known liberation theologian, Gustavo Gutierrez. When he was talking about the causes of economic injustices, he said, "Unjust situations do not happen by chance. It is not something branded by a fatal destiny. There is human responsibility behind them." These words set the tone for this podcast as I endeavor to conclude a series of 4 episodes that aimed at discussing the relationships of economic justice, interreligious relations, and peace building. Nonetheless, in this episode, I will be discussing the theme of conversion of the heart as a critical tool towards finding solutions to world economic problems. Once again, you are with me, Raphael Mkuzi. In the previous 3 episodes, we tried to explore a variety of causes of economic injustice. Among the many causes we discussed, we identified some key elements as major causes. First, we identified the failure to take into consideration the ethical dimension of economic discourses. In traditional economics, there is a lot of emphasis on material accumulation and profit making, and less on the welfare of the people. As a result, those who control capital end up stepping on the feet of the disadvantaged, the poor, the dispossessed, and marginalized of the society with impunity. Secondly, we also looked at the failure to define a human person as the creation of God, endowed with human dignity. In so doing, instead of economic systems serving the good of the people, it is the opposite. People are serving the economic systems. Consequently, we face what Karl Marx called alienation of labor. People do not enjoy expressing their skills as God-given gifts. Rather, they are estranged from their labor, and every time they work, labor becomes a reminder of inhuman conditions, oppression, and abuses. And thirdly, we discuss the demerits of misunderstanding the proper meaning of the common good. Indeed, without understanding that all the resources of the earth are gifts from God, given to all people, and therefore all people have the right to their use, we end up having few people monopolizing the resource of the earth at the expense of the majority poor. Fourthly, we have seen that proper understanding of causes of poverty should be looked at from the point of view of the oppression of the people. And issues dealing with economic injustice should aim at liberating human person from political, cultural, ecological, and social structures that support marginalization of the certain section of the society. Indeed, the list can go on and on and on. However, one thing we need to agree is that from the beginning of creation, a human person was designated to be the manager of all creation, was sent to till and keep the land. We find that in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. In this regard, we want to correct the situation, and if we want actually the good environment, a situation of economic justice, not economic injustice, we ought to go back to the same person and pose critical questions that remind him or her of the mandate given by the Creator God as the proper manager of resources of the earth. Simply put, this episode is proposing a return to a human person if we are to resolve the world crisis of economic injustices, inequalities, and environmental damages. That is the reason why the theme of conversion we are dealing with today is centering on the human mind and heart, the hub of all rationality that grounds the human person and his activities. To fully understand the significance of the term conversion of the heart and how it works in initiating economic justice, let us begin by exploring what it means by conversion and heart. Generally, conversion simply implies change of something from one form to another. For instance, if somebody changes his or her beliefs from one religion to another, we say he or she has converted, or conversion has taken place. Another example could be scientific. Changing electric current from direct to alternating, from DC to AC, the process that takes place is called converting, and the gadget that does the process is called the converter. However, conversion can also happen within a human person, and this does not necessarily involve the change of exterior looks of a person, rather the change of the perspectives, the thinking that lead to change of behavior. In religious terms, the term associated with this kind of inner conversion of a person is called metanoia, a Greek word that implies making a U-turn or making a 180 degrees turn. The word metanoia has been found appropriate in defining conversion of the human heart because of its implication of turning your face away from the evil and showing it your back and wanting to face a new life and wanting not to go back again to the bad life. Moreover, conversion in the form of metanoia implies the conscious decision to change for the better after realizing the bad life lived and opting for the good life. In the Holy Scriptures, the Holy Bible, the story of the prodigal son is an example of the conversion of the heart. The son, after meeting the hardships of life and facing a near-death experience, he opts for life. What he does then is to make a U-turn and go back to the good life of his house, his home, to be with his father and brother, and probably his mother too. Although the story does not talk about the mother, perhaps it was just implied in the story. That aside, the return of the prodigal son was an assurance of going to share the good life and the resources with his brother and all the workers of his father and his father too. Learning from the story of the prodigal son, we can see that greed of the son in the story puts not only himself in a situation of misery, but also the world around him, his father and his brother, and also the workers of his father. It was not until he made a conscious decision to let go the greed, the attitude of wanting to use the resource of his father alone, it was when his world was totally changed and he started living a good life again. Let us make a quick connection of this biblical story with the spirit of predatory capitalism or dictatorial socialism, whereby the resources of the earth are monopolized by few individuals or the political elites in case of socialism. So far, experience has shown us that whether capitalistic or socialistic economic systems have not succeeded to initiate a fair distribution of the wealth of the nations. There is a lot of suffering and pain in the world of the poor today, and the environment is continually being destroyed to satisfy the insatiable desire to increase production and profit on the marketplace, and eventually accumulate more capital than ever. Actually, the behavior of the world and how it is dealing with this economy is breeding death of the poor instead of promoting life. Life-supporting systems like air, water, vegetation are being affected, destroyed. Those who experience most of its far-reaching consequences are the poorest of the poor. If air is being polluted today, it's not capitalism as a system per se that is polluting the air, but the person who is running the machinery of capitalism is the one emitting the pollution. Likewise, the desertification, which is causing the shortage of water and Arab land for the people in the sub-Saharan Africa and threatening the life of the people, can only be understood in the context of the people who are contributing to the global warming effects. When there is greed, what we do have is poverty and suffering of many, and eventually leading to conflicts and wars of resources. Some environmentalists have even argued to say, what used to be the problem for only the poor people are quickly becoming universal. Our careless destruction of the ecosystem has made our world a habitat of unfriendly pathogens that are turning into universal pandemics. We never know, COVID-19 virus could be a mutation caused by environmental changes. So simply put, it's time for us to make a U-turn of our ways of acting in the world and look back to the original meaning of economia. That's the management of our common home, the earth. Remember, when we said economia, we defined it as the proper management of our common home, the planet, the kind of management that calls all of us to take care of each other and the environment around us, knowing that we have no other home where life exists apart from the planet Earth. Let us now turn to the notion of heart. When we say we need to have the conversion of the heart if we are to survive in this world and fight against the damages created by our unjust economic systems, what actually we are trying to say is to make an appeal to the very decision-making entity of our body, to the conscience of the people, and this has a close connection to the heart. From a biological point of view, the heart is the engine of the body, and through it, the whole body has circulation of food and oxygen. If the heart stops pumping, it means death has occurred. So from a scientific point of view, the heart is a critical organ of the body and determines the continuity of physical life. In this regard, when the heart has developed a major problem, thanks to the development of science today, doctors are able to do a heart transplant to put in a healthy heart so that a person should continue living. Thus, the change of heart leads to a new start of a healthy living. In the Old Testament, the notion of heart takes a deeper meaning than simply the organ of the body. To understand this deep meaning, let us explore a few analogies. Have we ever wondered why we call a person who gives us a gift or any kind of favor a sweetheart or a kind-hearted? I have never heard anybody talking about somebody being sweet-handed, although people use hands to offer gifts. The reason is that from time immemorial, work people do have always been thought to have come from the heart. This was also true in the Jewish faith that regarded the heart as the source of both the good and the evil done by a person. In Judaic traditions, it understood the heart to be at the center of all thoughts, and therefore once spoiled by evil thoughts, it was only God who could clean up the problem by creating a new heart to replace the old one. That is why in Psalm 51, the psalmist is asking God to create a clean heart in him and renew a steadfast spirit within him. Furthermore, during the Greco-Roman ancient times, there was dominant belief of dualism, whereby a human person was divided into body and soul, and the body belonged to the realm of evil, and the soul was the most important entity of the human being. The place in which the body was associated with the soul was the heart. It's where the whole rationality took place, and is what will be required on the last day of our lives. So we can see that over the centuries, the heart has taken an important position in understanding the human mind and thinking. So when we say conversion of the heart, it's a symbolism of the conscious decision of every human person to change from the bad rationality and perceptions that lead to destructive actions that take us into a direction of death instead of life. As we go ahead with our podcast, let us do a few things, identifying critical area of concern that urgently needs the conversion of the heart, to connect conversion of the heart with economic justice. This is the area of environmental care. In 2015, Pope Francis wrote an encyclical called Laudato Si that speaks volumes of how issues of environment is not only about care for trees, as if environment is just about planting trees. Yes, deforestation is part of it, but the document deals with the issues of environment as an economic issue with many faces. Pope Francis connected integral ecology with human development. He began by developing an idea that nowadays there is a growing tendency to believe in the mythology that economic growth will be a remedy for all global problems. Moreover, progress is measured in a simple growth of gross domestic product, neglecting the fact that a human person is not only an economic entity, but also a cultural, religious, and social being. So far, the term development does not have a unified understanding among capitalists, socialists, and atheists. The deficiency in the definition of the term development come from its interpretive economic models. The economic model, the one that continues to dominate most of the establishment, is the thinking and the planning that in the world today, analysis of development should be looked at in the context of capitalism. It is a model that defines development and underdevelopment in terms of availability or not of physical capital or means of production sufficient to stimulate new production, generating jobs, finance research, or promoting consumption. In this model, the level of participation in production determines the distribution of goods in the society. However, the model does not account for differences in the capacities among the people and has not dealt with the concern for the environment and future generations. Thus, it promotes an impaired form of economic justice that considers the right of ownership as absolute and measuring development with artificial index of gross domestic products. And as for those who consider development in terms of social model, the focus is on the adequate distribution of resources. The problem with this model lies in the fact that most often the term adequate does not mean the same as fairness. Instead of creating a conducive environment that promotes people's participation in the means of production, sometimes the emphasis is on charity divorced from participative justice. The goal of the social welfare approach to development is the redistribution of wealth within a given society. What this model neglects is the point that charity cannot be a substitute for justice, and therefore it is a transformative approach to development that defines economic and human development as integral, which is the proper understanding of development, and which is connected to the approach of Pope Francis on integral ecology. The approach defines development from a perspective of restructuring the whole economic system in the society. It premises from a belief that improvement in the lives of the majority of the people is blocked both internally and externally by individuals and groups who benefit from the present concentration of economic power. That is why radical scholars in human development consider that poverty, unemployment, marginalization, and indifference to the poor is not an unfortunate accident in an otherwise acceptable system, or as an intended result of increasing cultural individualism. Rather, they see these realities as consequences of political, economic order created by the rich and powerful to enhance and protect their privileges. Thus, the ways of Pope Francis, alluding to the need for integral development, assess the right path in understanding economic justice. But also quoting from what Pope Paul VI stated in his encyclical Populorum Progressio, he said that in the design of God, every man and woman is called upon to develop and fulfill himself and herself. For every life is a vocation. At birth, everyone is granted in germ a set of aptitudes and qualities for him or her to bring to fruition. Their coming to maturity, which will be the result of education received from the environment or personal efforts, will allow each man and woman to direct himself or herself toward the destiny intended for himself or herself, or by his or her Creator. Endowed with intelligence and freedom, he or she is responsible for his or her fulfillment as he or she is for his salvation. These ways of Pope Paul VI illustrate the human development is a right and a natural right for everybody, and a vocation and an obligation for all human persons, and it should be universal and inviolable and cannot in any way be surrendered. Thus, the deliberate creation of conditions that impede human progress and positive social change is a violation of human rights and acts of social injustice. Indeed, the transformative model of development offers a comprehensive scope to integral human development, putting a human person at the core and synthesizing all principles of economic justice. From this understanding of integral human development, Pope Francis understands issues of environment from an integral ecological approach. He calls for all people to develop systemic thinking, whereby human progress and flourishing need to be understood as a combination of interrelated factors affecting a human person as an individual, but also as a member of the whole society in its relation to the environment. A couple of things we should identify from this integral approach of Pope Francis. Firstly, he defines integral ecology as a comprehensive study of the environment as our common home. Integral implying the whole, ecology from the Greek word oikos to mean home, and logos are the discourse. Putting together, integral ecology is the framework that calls for the integration of various dimensions of human life into a broader vision of the reality. To properly understand the nature of integral ecology and how it endeavors to respond to ecological issues in the Laudato Si, the letter that popularly promulgated on the care for the environment, it is important to visualize the nature and the complexity of the problem that confront a person. A person is a multifaceted yet interconnected being. He is both cultural, economic, but apart from that, he is also spiritual and a social person. Thus, problems affecting a person are usually complex and requiring multifaceted responses. According to Alan Watkin, these complex problems are called wicked problems, and also they need wise problems to solve them. Thus, better solutions for such wicked problems can be arrived at by engaging all types of knowledge, scientific, economic, philosophical, sociological, into a deliberative process. This process leads to coherence, action that respects the totality of our situation, and that creates a synergy of bodies of knowledge. So, according to Laudato Si, the encyclical of Pope Francis, it is apparent that an integral ecology approach to global environmental crisis reflects the wicked problems. Pope Francis realizes that environmental degradation and its far-reaching effects on humanity, mainly the poor, is a multifaceted and multidimensional problem that cannot be solved by a single approach, like the way the conventional economic approaches now are trying to make us understand. Unfortunately, the growing culture of globalization, with its fast technological advancement and a free market economy, pretends to have a monopoly of answers to issues of ecological crisis. There is a tendency of reductionism, assuming that technology and finances are the only solution to all global crises. It's a tendency that neglects the fact that everything in the universe is interconnected, and that the crisis of the universe affects the whole complex system, both the environment and the society, and by extension, the human person per se. That is why the encyclical Laudato Si highlights that the discussion of the environment are incomplete if divorced from society. And by extension, the encyclical is emphatic on the impossibility of separating ecological issues from social issues, since ecological problems are also economic problems. At the core of integral ecology is the human person, a steward of all creation, and endowed with the gift of intelligence and free will, hence holding the responsibility to the proper care of the environment. Integral ecology also acknowledges the position of a human person in the world as a social being, and that his or her behavior will always be determined and affected by the culture, economic situation, politics, and the environment, among others. In that regard, honest and transparent dialogues with different peoples and from different dimensions of life and at different levels is very critical in responding to ecological issues threatening the globe today. The capitalists tend to exclude the poor in their misguided idea of global development that focuses on expanding the capital of those who control the means of production, neglecting the inherent power of creativity present in the marginalized, the poor, those nations in the peripheries. As Escobar, one of the very renowned economists, asserts, the cornerstone of the capitalistic classical theory of growth was capital accumulation, associated with increasingly specialized labor force. On the contrary, an integral ecology approach realizes that authentic human development puts the subject of the human person at the center. That is why the principle of the common good and intergenerational concerns are regarded as crucial consideration when thinking of production, distribution, consumption, and integral human development. And to argue further on Laudato Si, we can say that it ably illustrates that exclusive capitalism and fast-growing technological developments have not provided all answers to today's global economic injustices. The greed and uncontrolled self-interest in pursuit of more profit in the marketplace has only caused most and fast environmental degradation. Moreover, the overuse of natural resources to satisfy the compulsive consumerism of the rich continues to plunder the world and its resources, eventually widening the gap between the poor and the elites found at the top of the economic pyramid. All in all, Laudato Si has demonstrated that the theme of integral ecology is a deep theological and economic ethic that offers a systemic approach to issues of ecological crisis. It is also a reminder of humanity's obligation to a fair distribution of the resource from the Mother Earth, our common patrimony. We can conclude to say ecological justice connects very well with the conversion of the heart because it entices us to change our attitude toward the environment, toward the whole system. Unless we convert our thinking towards our neighbor, towards the environment, towards all life-supporting systems, then the systems that are propagating the destruction now cannot be eradicated. So once again, as I conclude this podcast, I'm making an appeal to everybody to say, we are all in one boat. We are all in this earth. And this earth is the one that sustains our lives. Our economy should be life-supporting economy. Otherwise, we are all heading towards destruction. We need to change our heart if we are to really save the economy that makes good of the people. You are with me, Raphael Mkuzi, in the 4 episodes that we have discussed, and I wish you all the best. Hoping to meet you again in other episodes. We'll be discussing issues of economy in regard to how it saves the human person. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you for being part of SoulForum today. We appreciate you tuning in and listening. Each episode allows you a chance to reach out to the speaker with one of your questions or insights, and I invite you to do that by just simply sending an email to soulforum@oslc.net. And we'll gather together some of the questions or insights and put together a small panel to have a live Zoom Q&A with each of our speakers throughout the series. My hope is that as you've listened to this podcast, that it can help you navigate your own soul's journey, as all of us are, in a sense, given the opportunity really to engage our life experience, not just through our mind and our bodies, but also through the way in which we express spirit in the world. So thanks for being a part of this journey into our common life and into the ways we give expression to our own souls in this day and age. See you next week.